Coming up, again, let me just tell you about the guest that we have coming on the show today. We have Daniel G. Stockin, MPH, doctor at the Lilly Center. He is a health researcher. This should be technical, not a medical doctor. And there's also in one of these pieces a state rep in Tennessee who's fighting this, and quite a few other doctors. And the good news, we're going to play this piece here in just a moment, and he's coming up next hour, is that they've been fluoridating our water for 50 years, and now you see towns and cities pulling it out. Now you see the establishment's program to try to force us onto this failing. And you see major newscasts talking about chemtrails. You see major newscasts talking about the New World Order, the North American Union. You see major newscasts across the country talking about fluoride being a poison. This is a major TV station in Tennessee. Here it is.
We have been fluoridating our water in Tennessee for more than 50 years, but never before has there been more talk than that fluoridating our water might be a bad idea and a health risk. Tonight, Dennis Ferrier has the latest developments on a story that impacts all of us.
Joey Hensley is a respected physician. He's also a Tennessee state lawmaker. He is now combining those two professions to make a very strong point.
We've been doing it 50 years, but just because we've been doing something 50 years doesn't necessarily mean that it's right.
Hensley's talking about something most of us don't even think about, fluoridating water. After much research, the doctor has sent out a letter to every water district in Tennessee asking them to stop fluoridating water. The evidence, he says, fluoride works better when you rub it on your teeth, not when you drink it. That fluoridation is medication added to water without your permission, and that's wrong. But most of all, because the National Research Council believes young children are getting 3 to 4 times the dose of fluoride as adults. And now the American Dental Association is telling mothers not to make baby formula with fluoridated water because of fear of dental fluorosis.
And that's big news, and that really hasn't been publicized very much.
Health researcher Dan Stockin believes that this ADA warning about baby formula and fluoride is just the beginning.
The ramifications of this are so huge, I'm sure that the state health department hasn't quite figured it out yet. Because once the door cracks, and it is now for what it does to teeth, the next group, one of the next groups that's going to start raising their hands and saying, what about us, is people who are on dialysis and people who have borderline kidney damage and impairment. Then there's all the people that have hypothyroidism.
Scientists like Nobel Prize winner Arvid Carlson and a large group of EPA scientists have called for the banning of fluoride because we don't know how much we're ingesting, so we don't know if we're being poisoned.
There are so many potential legal things about to happen that as a taxpayer, I think it would be really, really smart for the water districts and Metro Nashville. Look, if people want fluoride, let them use fluoridated toothpaste and spit it out, but don't go poisoning everyone. Don't continue this after everyone knows all this information now, just because it's not convenient.
Dr. Hensley has already had one response. Spring City in Ray County is going to stop fluoridating its water. And it is that simple. I mean, there's no law. It's all voluntary, Dan, so anyone can turn on the fluoride or turn it off.
Dennis, let's make sure we're clear on this. Fluoride, it is in tea, it's in coffee, it's in water, it's in bread, it's in toothpaste, but it's actually a poison, right?
It sure is, and here's the quickest evidence. Go to your bathroom and pick up your toothpaste, and you'll see a warning that if a child swallows more than a pea-sized amount of toothpaste, call poison control.
Wow. Dennis Ferrier.
Now, the bigger story here is not just that people are waking up across the globe to this. The bigger story here is, why did they put it in the water to begin with? Well, then you find the studies from the 20s and 30s and 40s. You find out the Nazis put it in the death camp water. You find out the Soviets. This is admitted. This is declassified. This came out during the Nuremberg trials. And then they brought it over here and put it in our water. And why? You heard that a child on average gets about 4 times. 4 times the effect an adult has because they ingest almost as much water as an adult, but they weigh a lot less, and the foods and everything else it's in. It brain damages them. Depending on which study, between 10 and 20-point IQ reduction. So a lot of you out there would have had 100 IQ. You wonder why you're a moron? It's because of the fluoride. They did this to you. It actually eats holes in your brains. I'm a moron. I mean, can you imagine how smart I would be? How smart a lot of us that are still somewhat intelligent would be if this hadn't happened. A lot of you have been so brain damaged by this, you can't even understand this show. That's why you talk to a lot of adults, and it seems like they're idiots, they're morons, they're fools, they're gibbering monkeys, basically. And that's because this has been done to them through this chemical weapon, through the water supply. And there are so many other things. I mean, the feds, more than a decade ago, said MBTE had to be put in all the fuel. And now 49 states have massive levels of it in all major drinking water supplies. And guess what it does? It also lowers IQ. It toxifies all the major tissues. And it, of course, also attacks sperm counts and infertility in men and women. Just so happens that the feds mandated that be put in all of the fuel. And then, of course, it runs off, it precipitates out through your tailpipe in gaseous form, and you breathe it. Another little present, another little goodie from the eugenicist. And see, imagine the tens of millions of people that thought we were kooks here 12, 13 years ago, and people before us 30, 40, 50 years ago, warning people about what was happening, and they all laughed at us, and now it's in New Scientist and Scientific American and Reuters and in Nashville, Tennessee, the major TV station there, with doctors and state reps and medical experts coming out and saying it's poison. It attacks your pituitary, it attacks your pineal, it attacks it all. And unfortunately, the damage is already done to where a large portion of the public are basically zombie automatons. Daniel G. Stockin, MPH, the Lilly Center, is a health researcher, master's in public health. We're also lining up State Representative from Tennessee, Dr. Hensley, the only practicing doctor in the legislature at this time, who's getting some of the water districts to pull it. I just talked to Mr. Stockin during the break, and I just said, hey, are you aware of the Nuremberg reports about how the Nazis used it to control people in the work camps? And he said, yes, but I like to focus on all the current stuff. The point is, a Pulitzer Prize-winning book, a lot of other publications, this came out, and I read the UT study again from 33. There's thousands of these studies, China, Ireland, England, the U.S., the head dentist who got it was in the government 15 years ago, got it forced on Canadians. The last 5 years, he's gone public. We've interviewed him, saying he didn't know that it was the stuff from byproducts of aluminum and also the production of fertilizers with a bunch of other heavy metals and poisons mixed in. Our guest is an expert on that, and at the first of the show, we played a clip from the local Nashville TV station, mainstream, reporting it's a poison. It affects the thyroid, the kidneys. I mean, this is some deadly stuff. Lower sex drive, testosterone, massive IQ reductions, especially when children drink it or ingest it. And why are we talking about this now? We've been talking about it for more than a decade because it's now finally hitting mainstream news. And so, Mr. Stockin, thank you so much for spending time with us, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Let's go back to who you are, your research, what you do. And I do want to cover some of the history first and then get into the current mainline medical studies.
Sure. Well, my background is in toxics assessment and hazardous materials management. I'm the former manager of the EPA Western Regional Lead Training Center, and I was a manager of the Environmental Training Center at University of California, San Diego Extension. And so my background is in toxics and hazardous materials. I used to put on the white suit and dive into spills of radioactive materials and biologic agents, that kind of thing. And so I got pulled into this. I bring that sort of perspective to the whole fluoride story, which happened sort of sideways for me when my boss, who's a 70-year-old plus lady, had a skin rash that the doctors couldn't get rid of, and she asked me, she's very intuitive by nature and had just moved to the Nashville area, was it possible that the fluoride she was drinking and showering in, could that be causing the skin condition? And so that's what kind of pulled me into this whole issue, and it began, that was a 3.5 year ago thing, a saga that has increased to where now an awful lot of developments have occurred, and so we're actively working to end water fluoridation, and we're actively directly going after the Centers for Disease Control, some very specific people in CDC by name, who have the authority and ability to be against fluoridation and choose not to. But you're right that there's a long history to this, and I'd be glad to talk to you about it, however you'd like to proceed.
Let's start. I mean, we know that lead, mercury, and fluoride, because of the Industrial Revolution, these were some of the earliest things studied going back 200, 300 years ago. So early on,